Aren't B Corps amazing? I love
They're just the best.
Well, if
no,
there's going to be a
Hilarious, Craig.
welcome,
Hilarious.
um,
right?
thanks, y'all. Thanks for being here to talk about Champions Retreat and debriefing. We're a few months away from it, but I've seen a bunch of posts go up on LinkedIn in the 2, 3 weeks, couple months out about people still processing the experience they had. So much happens at once at this Champions Retreat, the conference for all B Corps in the US and Canada, and this year's was in Milwaukee. In late April. And so, yeah, bringing together some key stakeholders from the On Purpose Oregon community to talk from their own really specific perspectives about the experience they had. And just think, we've got our own big conference coming up. It's going to be our 10th annual Build B Corp Leadership Development Pacific Northwest. And I just think there are lessons to take in how companies approach and get value out of a conference like Champions Retreat that could help them think, all right, how do I want to show up regionally as well? So I'll pass it over and we could just do some quick introductions, who you are and what was your lens on attending Champions Retreat this year? How about you, Craig? You want to start us off?
Would love to. I'm Craig Hill. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a longtime stakeholder in this Be Local community, on purpose community. I'm excited to be here, and this was my fifth Champions Retreat this past time around, and I always love seeing the different tones they take on. The energy that you bring out of it is often very similar, but the messaging and key takeaways do change every couple of years for every different type of assembly and collection of all of our North American champions and peers, especially given regionally this was so different being the first time it was held in the Midwest of the United States. Sarah?
I'm Sarah Holdeman. I am the co-founder of the Impact Collective and board chair at On Purpose Oregon. So at this Champions Retreat, which was my third Champions Retreat, I wore the hats of B Network Leader and got to attend the B Network Leaders day that was previous to all of the sessions, which was amazing. I am also a B Corp consultant. I help companies get certified. So that was another B Network leader hat that I wear and role that I was playing there. And I was also a main stage speaker. I got to moderate a panel, which was the dream of my lifetime. And so those were my three hats at this year's Champions Retreat.
Sweet. How about you,
How about you,
Ivana?
Ivana?
My name is Ivana Tucker. I am the digital marketing manager at A to Z Wineworks LLC. And I'm also the marketing and social media chair at On Purpose Oregon. This was my very first Champions Retreat, and I was there to help one, learn more, meet new people, and represent my company as well. And yeah, it was a very eye-opening experience because I've heard about Champions Retreat from other people who have attended, and I think it's very different once you're actually there. And we also was a beverage sponsor for a couple of the events there as well. So it was nice to see our brand there.
Awesome. And I'm Wes Griffin. I'm the executive director at On Purpose Oregon. We serve as the B Local chapter for Oregon and Southwest Washington. And so certainly I'm wearing that network leaders hat. And also I'm there to catch up with my peers that are trying to figure out how to best organize, motivate, support, and just make sure that the companies that are taking these extra steps toward social and environmental impact and toward measuring and communicating it are thriving in all the ways that we can help support that. I know, Craig, we've got you for the least amount of time, so let's jump in. And I just want to hear, you've been to quite a few Champions Retreats now. I know
Yep.
B Lab is celebrating 20 years of B Corp now. There's a bunch of sort of momentous and transitional things happening with the new standards. And Beneficial State Bank showed up as one of the lead sponsors of the event this year. So, just sharing a little bit about how you approach a conference as big and wide ranging as Champions Retreat, and then what
Yeah.
did you feel like Beneficial took from it?
Thanks. It's yeah, we're one of the presenting sponsors of Champions Retreat this year, and we brought 10 of my peers and colleagues from Beneficial State. We made the trek. We don't have any branches within 1,500 miles of Milwaukee. But this movement is so central to who we are and what we do of change makers and people believing that business not only can be, but should be a force for good. And what does that look like? And one of the coolest takeaways from this, I think, ultimately is the standards evolution from they used to be called version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, now moving to what's known as version 2 of a rather new way of looking at the standards entirely, is less focused on each company's individual impact and metrics and score, which we got really precious about in our history about seeing how we could up our score and these other types of methods to increase our impact, which we're still passionate about, but rather collectively when we get together, thinking less about us and more about we as a community, that what we all do together, and shifting the lens and framework away from what each individual company does as a constituent of this movement and more thinking about the collective impact that we as B Corps together can and do bring, especially if we all, rather than cobble our way to 80 points and how that looks, and that's how you get to be a B Corp out of 200 possible points. Rather, we're going to have several things that we all do together and must do together to be B Corps, and what types of changes that'll have for people, planet, stakeholders, stakeholder-centric businesses, impact economies, and local communities. That's a big shift. I think getting away from this mentality of what we do as a company to what we all do as a community is also not particularly capitalism centric historically. If we think about how capitalism is so driven by our company's profit and loss, and obviously that still matters, no margin, no mission, but rather how do you exist? We all exist within a community and we all exist, we all drive on the same roads, we all, walk down the same sidewalks. So we don't exist in a vacuum. We exist in a community. And thinking about who you partner with, the commitments you're making to our planet, about your carbon goals and renewable energy goals, thinking about how we can benefit our local communities that we work with and support, as part of our profit-making venture that we are as for-profit businesses. That's one thing we all have in common, is that we are a for-profit entity, that we work for them, own them, earn our paychecks from them. That was, I think, the biggest takeaway from it, and it really did lend some of these changes to how version 2 of the impact assessment has really evolved. It's getting away from thinking and being as precious about what your individual score might look like toward about we know that there are going to be things in these changes that are harder on certain industries than others to meet these challenges, and we recognize that as a messaging component from B Lab. And there are resources and tools to help you with those pivots and your other community members are all making similar commitments. And I think that is a tonal shift from any other Champions Retreat I've attended that's thinking about we're so grateful for the impacts that each of your company has, and you're part of this movement that does all these different beautiful things, but rather strengthening behind a message that is this is what we all do together and the really spelling out the benefits of what we could do if every company in the world were a B Corp, not just those of us who are here. And I'm really excited to see where that takes this community over the next couple of years.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to shout out uh, what a logistical challenge and financial investment it can be for a company to mobilize 10 people to show up and be in the different kinds of spaces that happen across, thousands of people and a week more or less of programs. So I just yeah, big hat to beneficial and the support that you put in because as on our side, we organize events that are maybe not quite to this scale, but quite similar, and we know what it requires. So thanks for sharing that, Craig. I appreciate it. And see you later. Ivana, I thought maybe we could pop over to you. So Craig kind of talked about the alignment, this moment to all, especially when the movement is going through changes to get on the same page. Um, and ideally, when the leaders that have come to represent their companies at Champions Retreat and get to go back and instill a lot of those changes and bring some of the energy and momentum back as well to their teams. That's a huge part of Champions Retreat and any conference. Another big part to me that I love is like, how are we celebrating the brands that make up this movement? No amount of learning. I mean, I think we all know at this point that good events, good conferences have to integrate some social time,
Yeah.
some fun to make sure that the learning can take, to make sure that we're building relationships. So we talk a little bit about just, what made A to Z want to show up in that way and support some of the social events, and how did that go? How did you feel about the reception?
Yeah, so we decided we wanted to sponsor it because one of our biggest priorities has been the last couple of years is like how do we show up better for the B Corp community and really amplify that we are a B Corp. And since we took ERAF under the fold, they became a B Corp under our with our recertification, and we wanted to have a moment to like celebrate that brand and also both our national brands. And we felt like what better avenue to introduce people to the brand than the place where there's a whole bunch of purpose-driven individuals and businesses and everything, and be able to like show up where it matters most. And so we decided to be a beverage sponsor, and we worked with On Purpose Oregon and got the connections, and we really value that partnership to be able to find an opportunity to get in front of the B Lab team. And and then we're very grateful for Beneficial State Bank, who advocated for us to be their they wanted us to be their welcome port at their event. So
Nice.
having those like local collaborations with local brands to like really amplify us, and like Aloshine was also there, so Oregon Wine Country was really well
That's right.
represented at the at Champions Retreat. And I feel like they did a really good job of like having us show up in ways that felt natural. And then it was like more of a conversation piece
Mm,
than anything, not necessarily just a label there, because especially by me being there, if people had questions about the wine, then like Beneficial State Big people like, hey, have you talked to
hmm
Ivana? She's with A to Z, and then able to talk more about the brand, like 101 versus like just seeing a logo there. So like being present while also having your products there, it does a really good job, because then if someone has a question or they became more intrigued, we can able to like speak more to it, and
hmm
then they get more buy-in into like what the brand is, because the human touch is so important, because otherwise you just see a brand name with the B Corp logo, but the human element of it is what makes B Corp so special. And so having that person there and being present even in those moments where you are activating makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we can take our moment and be really proud. Every B local region has its own magic, and Milwaukee did a great job hosting us. I had a blast in the city. Shout out, B local Wisconsin. And it was so cool to see, in the marketplace area, we saw Oregon B Corps. At the evening events, we had, like you said, Alzheimer, we had A to Z, ERAF, Beneficial State Bank. And so just like, we know this is a robust B Corp community. It's also a mobile, it's an activated B Corp community, right? They want to show up and do business together here in this region, but also be leaders for the movement, right? And help advance at that scale and at that level, be partners with B Lab. I just have one more question for you. So as you've been to a couple of the build conferences here in Portland before this, which was your first Champions Retreat. How did it meet up to what you expected? How did you, what did you learn that might help you navigate a conference like that differently next time with B Corps in particular?
Everyone always talk about how grand championships retreat is, and like all the installations and activations that B Lab does. And so I was really ready to see like how grand it was going to be in terms of what we do for build. And because it is a larger forum, and they definitely want to feel like it feels like a celebration of B Corps
Mm,
versus like a just purely educational forum. So like sometimes when you go like our build conference, we do a really good job of like being very intentional about addressing answers and questions. And I felt like the Champions Retreat had a good balance of being able to connect with one another while
mm,
also getting those lessons. But you can also interpret it in many, many different ways, no matter what session you attended. Well, I mean, they have very particular ones where it was like very granular in the scope of like the focus, but there were some
hmm
that were just so open-minded that anyone could be in. Like for instance, I was in the Lego session with Sarah, and there was people from all different types of jobs and companies where we're just learning about like playing and the act of playing, and like why it's so important in this current climate. And as B Corps and Corp business owners or employees, like what can we do to make sure that we're still having fun in our brainstorming and these difficult challenges that we're doing. And like this could be something that could be applied in your work or your personal life, but it like really it reminded us to nurture ourselves and like also like have a new way of thinking about things. So I feel like because we have such a wide B Lab has such a wide network and like the variety and like people speaking, you're able to hear these perspectives and like ground it in like the core nucleus of what the purpose is and like what how you can act and how you can take care of yourself. So I feel like that was like the biggest thing difference and it definitely set up my expectations because I met so many awesome people that I probably have never met in my life if I never went to this retreat that live in completely different states. They're like I still want to continue those connections afterwards because I'm able to connect with a different community and different networks that I learned about there. So it allows you to widen your scope and also like think about things a little bit differently than you would at locally because we talk about local things that build. So this is like way more larger scale.
I love that. And I mean, A to Z is nationwide, right?
Yeah.
Like you're selling everywhere. So hopefully you made some connections that are gonna come straight back to benefit the brands under your umbrella as well. Something you said struck for me a memory of a B Corp conference I was at. It wasn't this one, but I think this is resonant at pretty much all the B Corp events I've been to. But it was somebody who it was their first time, and they quizzically maybe in the late morning kind of cornered me and said, "I'm having a really interesting experience. No one has been selling to me yet." And he said it in a way that was kind of like, I'm unsure what to do because the familiar beats of conference are get straight into how can we help each other's business? And of course, there's a transactional nature to it. You want to come out of Champions Retreat with some new opportunities and new partnerships, but I feel like oftentimes that is a level built on top of the trust and the enthusiasm of seeing, oh man, I'm a geek about XYZ B Corp in another part of the country, and you're building the relationships based on something different than the pure transaction. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I think our biggest goal was just awareness. Because like wasn't going in with the intent like I'm gonna convert a whole bunch of sales from
Right.
attending here. It was more of like, let me go and like get our brand out there and like talk about it. Because I don't think there's don't get the opportunity. The Champions Retreat is a great way to connect with people and just tell your story and like why you're there. Because people are everyone there is so curious. So I felt like people were so comfortable and felt safe having those conversations to be able to introduce themselves and talk about what they do without feeling like it was a sales pitch. Because as you mentioned before, like it does feel like a sales pitch sometimes
It can.
when you talk
Yeah.
to people. So it was nice.
Awesome. Thanks, Ivana.
No
Sarah,
problem.
bring us home. Tell me how you approached. I know we often have folks from Portland show up, and they're you know, as as breakout speakers. I'm not sure. This is my third Champions Retreat, and I might be wrong about this. But I think this is the first
Have
time
we
we
never
had.
not been to Champions Retreat together?
Maybe not. Was your first one in Philly?
Yeah. Yeah.
We established the groundwork and we built on it.
Have to do it. Yeah.
So obviously we were proud to have you representing On Purpose Oregon, leading the main stage panel. And it was really like it was taking a moment that we know has been challenging for a bunch of B Corps, which is the transition to the new standards. And for a lot of companies, I would say there's anxiety even before they have clarity on what it's going to look like for them. But I loved the way you flipped it on its head about what's possible through this transition. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, for it's interesting. So I'll answer your question, but I will add a preamble as I am wont to do. It's interesting this year for Champions Retreat because so I wear like a lot of hats. I am board chair of On Purpose Oregon, so there's my like Be Local hat. I am also a member of the leadership team of the Be Consultants Network, so there's another Be Leader hat. And then there's the Impact Collective. And I think what's interesting is this year, this is my third Champions Retreat. It was my first time without Rebecca, my business partner, which was a little scary. But I think that, thinking about heading into this year's Champions Retreat, I think my biggest takeaway, I've been involved with the B Corp movement for 6 years. I've always known we're a movement, right? We've always talked about being a movement. We've always talked about what's possible when businesses, using business as a force for good. But it feels like this was really the first year thinking about the new standards, where we were kind of forced into conversation about like what is the purpose of the B Corp movement. It's not for 10,000 plus organizations to find their individual pathways to impact. It's to flip it on its head and really think about what it means for 10,000 plus organizations to be on the same path to impact in whatever unique way that means for them. For me, as a two-person, service-based organization, having a climate action plan means a whole hell of a different thing than A to Z having a climate action plan as a product-based like agriculture business, right? But it means we both have a climate action plan. It means we're both looking at what it means to like measure and make progress towards like either decreasing our impact on the environment or increasing our positive impact. And so I think being able to facilitate that main stage panel with Clay Brown and Carolina, and Aurora Archer was such a cool, like just a little behind the scenes. Like we probably spent 4.5 hours prepping for that panel. That wasn't necessary. We all just got really nerdy and excited about having that dialogue. And I hope that came through like on the actual main stage. But, really looking at, I think that I I'm excited about the new standards because to me it means it's sort of like a BLAO leading from the front rather than behind, and sort of making this statement of like as a movement we have, and after years of input and years of rounds of feedback and all of this stuff, like we have decided this is what it takes in this moment in time to have the type of world we all want to live in. And it's really interesting to see as a B Corp consultant, it's interesting to see we're losing some B Corps. Some B Corps are not going to rise to the challenge or whatever that means for them. They're choosing to not pursue the new standards. A lot of organizations who perhaps previously did not think the B Corp standards were enough are intrigued by the new standards and are wanting to join the movement. So I'll be really curious and interested to see what this next year, year and a half, 2 years looks like in terms of the movement. But what I do feel really strongly about is that what we see on the other side of it is organizations who are truly committed to using business as a force for good, because you can't stack the deck anymore, right? You can't stack your deck in community and ignore the environment. You can't have a really good governance structure, but maybe be kind of shitty to your workers. Like you have to have these minimum requirements across the board. And so I think, perhaps some organizations that maybe got certified for a marketing, for a marketing initiative, where the new standards are really asking people to walk the walk. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
Yeah.
answered your question, but I
No,
kind
I
of
think
forgot what it was.
that's okay. Yeah. Well,
I just got
I,
going and I couldn't stop
I'm,
myself.
I'm with you. Sometimes I feel like it's a little bit of a gotcha because my vantage point is 160 plus B Corps in Oregon and Southwest Washington, and they're not all perfect. None of them are, right? And in so many cases, they excel more, perhaps, on environmental initiatives than they do in other aspects, or vice versa, right? Like, not everybody comes to the movement, not every company comes to the movement fully baked. But I always felt like, or I have often felt like it can be a little bit of a gotcha. Like, well, hang on, what about that one company that does this one thing in an objectionable way? And I want to, I want to see companies striving and using a framework to improve. Um, Nonetheless, setting it up this way, we can be so much more confident that we're telling a consistent story, right? Because B Corps, when you get those objections, whether they're cynical or not, you can point and go, no, if they're certified, they've met every one of these minimum requirements. And I just feel like there's both the raising the bar aspect to that, which has always been a part of B Lab's aspirations, and hopefully a little bit more bulletproof to naysayers and critics. Um, I want to add, one more thing, which is exciting, which is when we were there on the Network Leaders Day, um, So a day for organizers of the local chapters, these place-based networks, but also non-place-based networks like the BIPOC network and Be Proud and B2B marketers and all different types of industry and role-based groups that make up the B Corp community. It was really exciting for us. So, I think On Purpose Oregon had 8 people there. We're spread out across these different roundtables and telling a little bit about our evolution to an organization that has always been about B Corps. How do we support B Corps? How do we connect B Corps? And our evolution has shifted the invitation to include more purpose-driven companies that uh, are quite likely to have a future with a certification, a B Corp certification, or another really strong and important eco-social certification. And when we started to share a little bit about that change, we heard it resonate immediately among other regional leaders that are like, when I'm organizing things, whether it is just a fun party to celebrate great brands all the way down to collective action opportunities where you want to lock in arm in arm to try to change things in an industry or municipal government or whatever. Um, we heard them saying the B Corp movement is growing and we still need more stakeholders involved in that. And so it was exciting to hear that message resonate and to have other regional leaders grapple with like, how do we keep opening our arms to be the type of aspirational partners we want to be? Because to make the type of transformational change for On Purpose Oregon, we want to create an economy where impact isn't exceptional, it's expected, it's the norm. And so you have to be willing to say, I'm not only going to work with a company that I know is perfect all the time. To hear that resonate was really exciting for us. And now pivoting gives me a lot of enthusiasm for our upcoming Build conference. This is our 10th annual Build Pacific Northwest. And our theme this year is Together on Purpose. So we're asking companies to approach this with dropping some of the distinctions, certainly the purity tests that like kind of come naturally in a space of certifications, um, and come to the table thinking about how to collaborate across different communities, across these different values and purpose-driven communities, not for profit, certainly for profit, certification-based communities. And so yeah, I always look at Champions Retreat through the lens of what we're going to do here at home for what it's worth. I also want to shout out the lead Champions Retreat organizers. They come from this hotbed of B Corps, right? Karen Lichtig was with Nosa Familia, Rose Lavelle was with Scout Books, and both of them have been a part of B Local PDX. Kel Moody was our chair here at B Local PDX. To see how they've gone on to shape the broader movement has been incredible. And so always taking lessons. So I just invite anybody who is interested in Champions Retreat in the future, make a plan and think about how the different ways it's going to impact your brand, your team, and the ways they can learn from it. And as both of y'all have alluded to, sort of the whole human aspect and inspirational aspect of being around people and seeing where this whole thing is going. And you don't have to wait until whenever the next Champions Retreat is going to be to get some of that goodness. We're going to be at Portland State University on October the 8th for our 10th annual build, and we'll be selling tickets for that ASAP. Any final thoughts?
My final thought is just to say I think one of the coolest things for me for Champions Retreat was that Network Leaders Day. And I think that like our shift to On Purpose Oregon was one that was really intentional and labor and brain intensive. It's something that as an organization, we spent a whole lot of time thinking about, mapping our ecosystem, understanding what the necessity for it was and if it was necessary. And I think that having conversations with all of the other Be Local chapters across the US and Canada and the way that our choice resonated with them, was really a cool experience. I think that there was a period of time when, it's like B Corp or bust, right? Like we are, the purity test you mentioned. And I think, I don't know if you guys have heard We are living in a challenging time. If I'm the one to break it to you, I apologize. Shit's weird. And I think that there is really this urgency and this desire to break down some of the barriers, right? And to not have this like, well, I'm a B Corp and you are, people in Planet First, or maybe you're not even certified, but you're still impactful and purposeful. Really thinking about like how we all come together to solve some of the challenges in front of us. That just was a sentiment that was iterated and reiterated over and over throughout my experience at Champions Retreat.
My last comment is basically I feel like even if you are feeling nervous about going to something that's in a different place all by yourself, our
Yeah.
community is so loving and caring in Oregon that they will take you under your wing and like we don't leave anyone alone. And that was like my biggest concern. And I'm very grateful for our community for being so welcoming and proactive to make sure everyone feels included if they are traveling alone, because it didn't feel like I was alone at all the whole time. So it's very nice. So if you have any like concerns about that, but also if even if you're just learning, if you necessarily don't want to be a B Corp, there's a lot of pathways at the conference and good educational sessions that can be applied to any certification. But and they have like they have the backing, so might as well get the education for the people who's doing all the research. Even if you're going a different purpose-driven certification route, it's a great way to just get information and learn about how to go on the purpose-driven route as a company or individual.
Yeah, that's the right note to end on. Thanks, y'all, for our Champions Retreat debrief. We'll see you later.